The Warriors are running away with the West in the NBA, and that includes knocking off one of their big threats from the East in Boston last week. The playoffs between the top four in the East may be more interesting than what happens in the West this postseason. 1. Warriors 36-14, last week. No. 1. The Warriors with DeMarcus Cousins are as good as you thought they would be, and as good as the rest of the league feared. The five-man starting lineup with Cousins has been 37.4 per 100 possessions through its first 4 games, allowing less than a point per possession on defense and scoring at a 128 per 100 pace. The Warriors are winners of 11 in a row, including a 5-0 road trip with DeMarcus Cousins starting every game at center. That has the Warriors with the best record in the West, if it's that way on February 3. Steve Kerr will coach the All-Star game for the 3rd time. 2. Bucks 36-13, LW2. Giannis Antetokounmpo has played 24% of his minutes this season at center, and that lineup can be very effective. Against the Hornets, the Greek Freak got put in at the 5 for the 4th and outscored Charlotte 14-12 by himself, leading a come-from-behind win. The Bucks are reportedly putting their big toe in and testing the Anthony Davis trade waters, but it's hard to picture them pulling it off because any deal would gut the depth of this team and leave them with 2 stars, not enough shooting and little else. By the way, Antetokounmpo can still do this to teams. 3. Nuggets 34-15, LW4. The Nuggets have won 3 in a row, but the impressive part is they got one without Nikola Jokic, a letter of the law suspension for leaving the bench during a fight, and the last 2 without Jamal Murray, left ankle. It fits the pattern. All season this team has had to adjust due to injuries, and all season Denver has just kept on winning with the next guy stepping up. It speaks to the coaching and depth of this roster. Jokic will get an All-Star nod this week, it's well-deserved. Monday's win in Memphis was the first of 6 of 7 on the road. 4. Raptors 37-15, LW3. Toronto went 3-1 resting Kawhi Leonard for 4 games, but his return against Houston was not enough to slow James Harden or stop the Rockets from winning. Resting Leonard may hurt the Raptors on the court short-term, but the long-term goal is to win Leonard over so he re-signs, and showing him they put his health and welfare first is a big step in that direction. Fun showdown Thursday night against the Bucks. 5. Celtics 31-19, LW7. Celtics fans and brass will be sitting on pins and needles for the next 8 days until the trade deadline passes. Once it does, they move into the driver's seat to land Anthony Davis. Until then, they can just beg the Pelicans to wait and watch the Lakers. Recently, Boston has looked like the team we expected, a team that will challenge for a trip to the finals out of the East, and they've done it with Kyrie Irving running the show late in games. The problem with a one-man attack late in games was exposed against Golden State. They put the clamps down on Irving and nobody else was able to step up. That could be an issue in the postseason. 6. 76ers 33-18, LW5. Philly went 2-1 while Jimmy Butler was sidelined with a wrist injury, but he returned Tuesday in a victory against the Lakers, which means Butler will be ready to go Thursday night in Golden State. Butler also returned with a new, smoking celebration. The Sixers keep coming up on the fringes of the Anthony Davis trade talks, but the only deal that really works sends Ben Simmons and filler Markelle Fultz to the Pelicans, and Simmons is a client of Rich Paul's, Davis's and LeBron's agent, and the fierce pushback from Paul makes that trade unlikely. He would push AD not to re-sign with Sixers. 7. Thunder 32-18, LW8. Winners of 6 in a row, and while Russell Westbrook's triple-doubles, 4 straight games, and Paul George's MVP-level play get the bulk of the attention, something else is going on. The Thunder have become a good shooting team. For the first 40 games of the season, the Thunder shot 32.3% from 3 as a team, bottom 10 in the league, but in the last 10 games they are shooting 42.9%. Those shots falling off kickouts or other actions opens up everything else because defenders have to contest. The Thunder need to keep it up as OKC has the toughest remaining schedule in the NBA, based on opponent win percentage. 8. Trailblazers, 31-20, LW9. Damian Lillard is a lock to be named as a reserve to the All-Star team this Thursday. While he has had another phenomenal season and is the clear leader on this team, the other reason the Blazers have won 5 of 6 is the role players stepping up, Yusuf Nurkic, Jake Layman and Seth Curry in particular. Don't expect Portland to get in on the Anthony Davis sweepstakes, but also don't be shocked if they make a small move at the deadline to add some depth. Jazz, 29-22, LW11. Just 6 weeks ago the question was, what's wrong with the Jazz, as they were in 14th place in the West, with just an okay defense and a struggling offense. That seems like another lifetime ago. The Jazz have won 9 of 10, have a 9.1 net rating in those games, their defense is back to being elite led by Rudy Gobert, second best in the NBA in the last 10, and Donovan Mitchell has his groove back. Utah is the 7th seed in the West as you read this, but they are just 2 games back of having home court in the first round, and the Jazz have the second easiest schedule in the league the rest of the way. 10. Rockets, 29-21, LW10. Chris Paul is back, but he doesn't change the underlying problem. Houston is 6-4 in its last 10 games, with James Harden carrying the offense to a top 10 ranking in that time, but the defense can't get a stop, so those efforts go to waste. Tuesday night was a perfect example. Harden had 37 points, his 24th straight 30-plus point game, but the Rockets could not stop the Pelicans' Jahlil Okafor, who had 27 points and grabbed 12 boards, so the 80-less Pelicans won. That's an ugly loss. The Rockets are a playoff team, but that's it right now. 11. Spurs, 30-22, LW12. Will LaMarcus Aldridge make the All-Star team? He's got a great case, averaging 21.1 points and 8.8 rebounds, leading the Spurs into a playoff position, but the West is so ridiculously deep with talent he is on the bubble. The Spurs have won 3 in a row as they move through a soft part of the schedule, which continues this week. That doesn't mean all the wins are easy. Greg Popovich was livid at his team for the way they came out against Phoenix, but Rudy Gay bailed them out. 12. Pacers, 32-17, LW6. Victor Oladipo is lost for the season with a torn quadriceps tendon, and that's a huge punch to the gut. The Pacers have gone 0-2 without him, and now head out on the road for their next 4. This team is not going to fall out of the playoffs in the East. If they go just 10-23 the rest of the way, they are above .500 for the season, but the team struggles to score without Oladipo and they are no longer a threat in the playoffs, which is unfortunate. This was a team everyone wanted to avoid in the postseason before because of their balance in defense. 13. Nets, 28-24, LW13. Loss of Spencer Dinwiddie to a thumb injury for 4 to 6 weeks is a blow. He's in the most improved player conversation for good reason, and their bench will not be the same without him. That said, D'Angelo Russell is playing the best basketball of his career the last month and will take on more responsibility as the starter, and this is why Shabazz Napier is on the roster. Tough season for the Nets, losing Karis LeVert and now Dinwiddie, but this team keeps plugging guys in and winning. 14. Clippers, 28-23, LW14. Will Tobias Harris make the cut for the All-Star reserves? He is right on the bubble despite averaging 21.2 points, 7.9 rebounds, and shooting 43.3% from 3 this season, because the West is so stacked with talent. He deserves it, but his reward will come this summer when he's a free agent and gets paid. The Clippers had won 4 of 5, much of that on a tough road trip, but a sloppy loss Sunday to the Hawks is the kind of game LA will look back on and regret if they miss the playoffs. 15. Heat, 24-24, LW17. The Heat get mentioned in the fringes of the Anthony Davis trade talks, but if they end up in it before the deadline or in July, it will be as a third team in a big deal. Which is to say it's unlikely, but the rumors will not stop. Miami picked up a couple of road wins in Cleveland and New York this week, the kind of games playoff teams should win, and now are home for a week before heading back out on the road. Miami needs to rack up wins as it has the second toughest remaining schedule in the East. 16. Lakers, 26-25, LW 15. The Lakers are 6-11 without LeBron James, who is expected to return Thursday against the Clippers, which is just in time for one of the toughest stretches of the schedule for the Lakers. But nobody wants to talk about any of that. The Lakers are pushing hard to force an Anthony Davis trade before the deadline, before Boston can get involved, and the offer reportedly would involve Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram, a first-round pick and more. Sources have told me the Pelicans will be patient making this move, meaning after the Feb. 7 deadline, but the Lakers and Rich Paul are going to do everything they can to force a move now. 17. Hornets, 24-25, LW 21. Kemba Walker gets to start in the All-Star game in his city of Charlotte. That is huge for him and the organization. The Hornets are holding on to the 8th seed in the East. They have a 3-game lead over the Pistons, but they need to keep finding wins. Which is why the loss to the Bucks, when Milwaukee went small with Antetokounmpo at the 5 and outscored Charlotte 35-12, sting. Stealing wins against good teams will be a huge boost for Charlotte in a playoff push. 18. Kings, 25-25, LW 16. The Kings will have Buddy Hield and De'Aaron Fox in the Rising Stars Challenge and taking part in events All-Star Saturday night, but if the Kings were in the East, both of those guys would have a good argument to make the All-Star game itself. In the West, sorry, but the conference is just too deep. Sacramento is home for its next 6 and needs to rack up wins to make a playoff push. They are 2.5 games back of the Clippers right now. 19. Timberwolves, 24-26, LW 18. Karl Anthony Towns will make the All-Star team reserves announced Thursday, and that's well-deserved, although his slow start to the season may keep him off the All-NBA squad. Minnesota has gone 7-6 without Robert Covington, sporting a middle-of-the-pack defense without their best defender. He's riding a stationary bike now, and his return could help the defense and spark a push to the playoffs by the Timberwolves. 20. Mavericks, 22-27, LW 22. Luka Doncic will be in the All-Star Friday Rising Stars game, then on Saturday in the skills competition, but will the coaches vote him in as a reserve for Sunday's All-Star game itself? While the fans had Doncic second in the voting, ahead of Paul George and Anthony Davis, it's unlikely the coaches will put him quite on that pedestal. 21. Pelicans, 23-28, LW 19. Anthony Davis wants out, and while the team makes its trade decision, sources told me they will not be rushed to make, meaning it will likely drag out past the trade deadline and likely until the June draft or July. There is another question: do the Pelicans bring him back and play him this season? They are not making the playoffs this year and are about to start a rebuild. I would say no, send him home. Trade guys like Nikola Mirotic if there's a good deal, and improve their draft position. There's no reason to invite the circus to town whenever he plays a home game and gets booed. 22. Wizards, 21-29, LW 20. The Wizards were telling teams very recently that they were not sellers, no Bradley Beal or Trevor Ariza trades, because they were making a playoff push. Does the loss to Cleveland Tuesday, dropping them 3.5 games back of the playoffs, change that equation? Washington is 8-7 without John Wall, sporting a 1.8 net rating in those 15 games, basically treading water but not making up ground either. If they become a seller, teams will be interested in Ariza and Otto Porter. There's interest in Beal, too, but Washington isn't moving him. 23. Pistons, 21-28, 23. Rarely has one moment from a post-game interview summed up a team's season so well. The Pistons are not making a playoff push, they are falling back in the East, and after the one win in those 5, an ugly win against the Pelicans, Blake Griffin was talking about the team's lack of focus, when Reggie Jackson proved his point. 24. Magic, 20-31, LW 24. Will Orlando be trade deadline sellers? The team has lost 4 in a row, 7 of 8, and is 5 games out of the playoffs. They are not going to make a run and get in. There's a lot of interest around the league in Terrence Ross, and there may even be a taker for Nikola Vucevic, although he is a tougher fit, a good player but one who needs to be in the right system to be effective. The Magic had been holding off, thinking playoff push, but the smart move now would become sellers while giving their young players even more run. 25. Hawks, 16-33, LW 25. Trae Young got buried by the narrative at the start of the season. He couldn't buy a shot while Luka Doncic looked like the savior in Dallas, but of late Young has started to show a more rounded game. In his last 15 games, he's shooting 34.8% from 3, although he is still inconsistent, and in his last 10 has averaged 20.2 points and 7.1 assists a game. The Hawks almost certainly will be sellers at the trade deadline, with Jeremy Lin and Kent Bazemore at the top of the list of available players. 26. Grizzlies, 20-31, LW 26. Mike Conley and Marcus All, the anchors of this franchise seemingly since the Carter administration, are available via trade. It's the end of an era, eventually. It's not going to be easy to trade the big salary and diminishing skills of Gasol at the deadline. There's a lot of interest around the league for Mike Conley, but he's making $30.5 million this season and has $67 million essentially guaranteed the following 2 seasons. It takes a lot of players to balance out the salaries, which is why trades that large usually are completed in the off-season. 27. Suns, 11-42, LW 27. Devin Booker has all-star numbers, 24.8 points, 6.7 assists and 3.6 rebounds per game, but being the best player on the worst team in the West is not going to get him an invite to Charlotte. Don't tell anyone, but Dragan Bender has had a few good games in a row. The question is, can he start to do that consistently? 28. Cavaliers, 11-41, LW 30. Break up the Cavaliers. They have won 2 in a row, beating the Bulls and Wizards. The Cavaliers will try to be sellers at the deadline. Jr. Smith has been available in the bargain bin for months, with the most likely to be moved being Rodney Hood, followed at a distance by Tristan Thompson. A trade for Kevin Love will have to wait until the offseason, at best, because of his injury, and even then it will be hard. He has one of the hardest to move contracts in the league. 29. Bulls, 11-40, LW 29. There has been talk about them trying to bring Anthony Davis home to Chicago via trade, but it makes no sense. Any deal for AD would have to include Wendell Carter Jr., Lauri Markkanen, and anyone else the Pelicans wanted off the roster. Even if the trade happened, this would be a gutted Bulls roster, leaving Davis to take on the world alone, and we've seen in New Orleans how much he likes that scenario. Then AD would leave as a free agent and the Bulls would be back to square one. Chicago just needs to keep building and save their moves for another day. 30. Knicks, 10-39, LW 28. With the Knicks having lost 10 in a row, time to give their beleaguered fans a stat they care about. Via Tom Haberstroh of NBC Sports, in ACC conference play, Zion Williamson is scoring 25 points a game on 71.8% shooting. That is insane. Of course, it leads to a big question. If the Knicks did win the lottery and the rights to draft Williamson, would they try to trade it along with Kristaps Porzingis to land Anthony Davis? Should they if Kevin Durant said he would come to play with AD?